Hello, hello. There you go. Good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Good deal. So I'm going to start off with a poem. And then we'll dig a little deeper. Imagine living in a world where it's okay to say that it's a blessing that you got pregnant from being raped. Imagine living in a society that gives more grace to a father who doesn't take care of his child or his children than to a child who loves differently than their peers, where society's misguided fears are what drives the whole world to be against you. Imagine being sexually assaulted over and over again. Imagine that assault coming from strangers, family, and friends. Imagine convincing yourself that the only way to change was to allow that to happen more. Imagine praying to just not be alive no more. Imagine isolating yourself from your niece and nephew because if one of them becomes gay, it's your fault. Imagine believing that. Imagine allowing that BS to seep so deep into your soul that you just don't know who you are anymore. Imagine living your life in what you truly feel is your purpose. Imagine bawling your eyes out in the parking lot of a venue. Imagine someone from the audience saying, "Thank you for your words." Imagine feeling worthless and powerful. Imagine feeling happiness and sadness in a continuous stream of tears that for the past 12 years have been wiped away by the most beautiful chocolate munchkin princess in the world. Imagine not knowing your place in her life anymore. Imagine feeling helpless. Imagine your heart being held together by the last bit of hope you hold on to, hoping that one day that you can finally be you. Imagine knowing that one day you will get there, but still feeling defeated. Imagine standing in front of a room full of people as if nothing is wrong. Imagine holding every bit of strength you have together to even be there. Imagine believing in love again. Imagine forgetting everything that ever hurt you. Imagine believing in you. Imagine finally loving yourself. Imagine trusting God. Imagine promising yourself to take it one day at a time. Imagine taking it 1 second if you have to. Imagine not really knowing what to do with all of this. Imagine feeling God in your fingertips with every stroke. Imagine feeling like the brunt of life's joke. Imagine closing your eyes and seeing heaven, wondering if it's any better up there or wherever it is. Imagine hurt becoming your best friend. Imagine praying to just not be hurt anymore. Imagine actually believing that you can. Imagine taking the necessary steps to heal. Imagine this poem being one of them. So, good morning, everyone. Again, like Jamie said, my name is Taryn LoveReigns Warwood, and I'm excited to be here with you all. And we're going to talk about healing, right? And we're going to talk about how I use poetry as a form of healing, as a form of therapy, as a form of saying the things that I don't like to say. Right, out loud, saying the things that we always feel is, it's taboo, and those things that we feel like we can't talk about. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you all can see that. All right, can you see my screen? All right, so this is writing through your healing, right? Finding the words to say, it, whatever that it is, right? So who am I? I'm a poet. I make mistakes. Imposter syndrome whispers things in my ear daily. I'm a child of Sharon and somehow recently I turned 40. I still very much need my mom in everything I do. I don't know what I'm doing in this life. I just know that there are dreams and things that tug at my heart, and so I follow them. I know things, but I'm always open to learning more. I mess up a lot, and I am human sometimes. So that's me. And yes, that is me on the left. All right, so let's talk about the it, right? Usually the elephant in the room when it comes to poetry. One of the questions that I always get from people is, how do you write? Like, how do you write your feelings? Of course, people ask about the structure. That's something that comes later, right? I always tell people, don't focus on the structure. Just focus on writing. Focus on getting it out, right? So what is it? And why don't we say it? Right? We always feel like It is one of those things that's taboo when we're hurting, when we're triggered by something, when we feel pain, when we have words that we know that, no one will see. How do we express what that is? How do we express that and how do we get it out? How do we talk about that through poetry? So my hopes with this workshop today is to have a little bit of fun and make healing fun, make healing through poetry fun and writing in poetry fun. So it may be a stretch, but just roll with it, roll with me on this. All right. So I was doing some research and I found out that there's an actual phobia for poetry, right? It's called metrophobia. It's a fear of poetry. Metrophobia can take several forms. Some sufferers fear all poetry, while others fear poems that deal with the specific subject matter or are written in a specific style. If poetry was something that stressed you out in grade school, then as an adult, in college, any contact with poetry or poetic readings can cause panic and anxiety. Like I've seen that actually happen to people in person, but I didn't know that it was an actual phobia. Like I didn't know that it was a thing. So some of us we may suffer from metrophobia, not realizing it, because typically people feel like, oh, poetry is boring, or I'm not a poet, I don't understand it, right? And my hope is to take away that stigma about poetry. I've been writing poetry my whole life. I was introduced to it literally at the age of 5. I was introduced to poetry and I just fell in love with it. And to me, what I've learned over the years at the tender age of 40 is that poetry is what you make it. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't even have to make sense to anyone but you, right? It's a matter of just getting it out. And so when we talk about healing and we talk about processing things like grief, right? I'll give you a prime example. Grief is hard for me. It's not something that I've experienced a lot of in my life in terms of losing people in their physical presence in this physical realm. So it's not something that I'm used to, and it's something that I'm still trying to be okay with. I just lost a really, really good friend of mine on March 18th. So it's still fresh and it still hurts. But one of the things that I've found in terms of healing and accepting it is writing, and writing about her life. She lived an amazing life, and that's what it's about. That's like, she checked all the boxes. And so those are the things that make me smile when it comes to poetry. So when we talk about healing in poetry, I always like to focus on the positive, right? It's okay. It's okay to acknowledge the negative, but focus on the positive. Do as much as you can to focus on the positive. All right. Does anybody know what this picture's from? Pop quiz.
I believe
Robin
it's a movie.
Williams movie. Poetic Justice? No. Poetic Justice?
Is it?
That's it.
Dead Poet Society. I heard somebody.
I'm
I
thinking
heard
of Janet
somebody.
Jackson, sorry.
All right, so I'm going to play something really quick. Hopefully you all can see this. Let me test it out to make sure that you can hear it. Can you all hear that? No. Let's see. Jamie, are you still there?
I am here. There should be, when you hit share screen, like stop sharing.
Okay, stop sharing.
And when you hit share screen, it should give you an option to like.
Share sound.
Yeah, there you go.
Got it. There we go.
Support, that's why I'm here.
All right, so let's see now. Let's try it.
Gentlemen, open your text.
Can you guys hear that?
Of the introduction. Mr. Perry, will you read the opening paragraph of the preface entitled Understanding Poetry?
Understanding Poetry by Dr. J. Evans Pritchard, Ph.D. To fully understand poetry, we must first be fluent with its meter, rhyme, and figures of speech. Then ask two questions. One, how artfully has the objective of the poem been rendered? And two, how important is that objective? Question 1 rates the poem's perfection. Question 2 rates its importance. And once these questions have been answered, determining the poem's greatness becomes a relatively simple matter. If the poem's score for perfection is plotted on the horizontal of a graph, and its importance is plotted on the vertical, then calculating the total area of the poem yields the measure of its greatness. A sonnet by Byron might score high on the vertical, but only average on the horizontal. A Shakespearean sonnet, on the other hand, would score high both horizontally and vertically, yielding a massive total area, thereby revealing the poem to be truly great. As you proceed through the poetry in this book, practice this rating method. As your ability to evaluate poems in this manner grows, so will your enjoyment and understanding of poetry.
Excrement. That's what I think of Mr. J. Evans Pritchard. We're not laying pipe. We're talking about poetry. How can you describe poetry like American Bandstand? Well, I like Byron. I give him a 42, but I can't dance to it. Now, I want you to rip out that page. Go on. Rip out the entire page. You heard me. Rip it out. Rip it out. Go on. Rip it out. Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Gentlemen, tell you what, don't just tear out that page, tear out the entire introduction. I want it gone. History. Leave nothing of it. Rip it out. Rip! Be gone, J. Evans Pritchard, Ph.D. Rip, shred, tear, rip it out. I want to hear nothing but ripping of Mr. Pritchard. We'll perforate it, put it on a roll. Not the Bible. You're not going to go to hell for this. Go on. Make a clean tear. I want nothing left of it. Rip it out, rip!
All right, I'm gonna pause it there. Has anyone ever seen that movie before? So I
It's
definitely
my favorite all-time movie. I've watched it like 100 times.
Oh, I love it. I love that movie, right? So the reason I like that scene is because when it comes to poetry, I think it's gonna try to open it up again. No, let's not do that. There we go. Forget everything you know, everything you thought you knew about poetry, right? When it comes to writing and finding healing through writing, you're not going to find it in a book. You're not going to find it in the meaning of poetry. It's really all about your feelings, right? We'll talk about like structure and all that stuff later. But the main thing is to forget everything that you thought you knew, right? One of the things that whenever I go into, when I'm speaking to kids or youth, they say, oh, poetry is boring. And then when I ask them why, the first question they say is, oh, my English teacher tried to get me to write haikus and all this stuff, right? I want to change it to where we make poetry fun, right? We talk about our feelings. We talk about those things that, people say that we shouldn't talk about, right? And to me, the reality is, if there's so many taboo things that we are afraid to talk about, it's not like we don't go through these things. It's not like we don't go through, no matter how old you are. We all go through heartbreak. We go through sadness. We experience grief. We experience trauma. We have triggers, right? So if these are all the things, no matter our race, color, creed, sexuality, religion, none of those things matter. If we all experience those things, why don't we talk about it? Why can't we talk about it? Why is it so taboo to talk about those things, right? So not only forget everything that you thought you knew about poetry, forget everything that you thought you knew about life in general. We're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure it out, and we're all trying to get to a better understanding of ourselves and our healing, right? So poetry is beyond what you learned in school. All right? Don't focus on understanding it, right? I have nothing to say. I am saying it, and that is poetry. Right? Nothing can be, it can be something or it can be anything. Don't focus on trying to understand it. One of the things that I do when I go into these, the workshops that I do with Hope at Hand, I go into the detention centers, the jails, the women's pretrial jail, and the juvenile detention centers and the rehab facilities with teens. When we read the poetry, very rarely do I focus on the structure of the poem. What we focus the most on is the words, right? And what is the poet saying? What is the writer saying? What is it that they're trying to convey? What is it that that they want you to, that they're saying in this poem, right? All of the structure and all that other stuff, it matters to a certain extent. But if you understood the structure without understanding the purpose, then what does the structure matter? It doesn't matter if you understand the structure, or even if you know that they're using, AA, BBC meters or pentameter or any of those things. None of those things matter if you don't understand what they're even saying, right? So don't focus on, when it comes to writing and talking about healing, don't focus on rhyming or sounding good. Free write. Write what you see, write what you hear, write first, and then edit later. All right, so we're going to do a little writing exercise. So what I'd like for you to do is find an inanimate object near you, whatever it is. Find it, write about it. I'm going to set the timer for 60 seconds. And this is all I want you to focus on. I don't want you to focus on anything else. I just want you to write down what the object is. So if you see a stapler, I see a stapler, right? It is gray. It has silver staples. That's all I want you to focus on for this particular exercise is whatever, find an inanimate object. What is the object? What do you see? What are the colors? What is the shape? What is it doing? Is it sitting, standing, hanging, right? And we'll do that for 60 seconds. So let me set my timer. All right, and go. And stop. All right. Would anyone like to share? I don't know if I have just feel free to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, I wrote about this blue. Oh, that's hot. I got a blue mug.
All right.
And I wrote dark blue cup with brown and yellow speckles, warm with hot, fresh apple tea, sitting, resting on a plaid tablecloth, circulating, moving, twisting, and then stopped.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to share?
Hello, I'll share.
Okay.
I have my camera bag right here.
Okay.
Big camera bag.
That's a cool camera bag.
Oh, thank you. I'm a photographer, but yeah, I have my camera bag, and I wrote pink with black straps, laying on the table, armor, protection, carry, waterproof, zippers, a rounded square shape, and life.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share? We'll do one more. All right. So now, so that's like, let's just like, that's the surface, right? So if we were to compare that to a feeling, or to, let's say, a trauma, right? Like, let's say I'll use myself as an example. So if I were to take that first step in identifying whatever the thing is, what am I seeing? I see grief, right? So I'm describing the grief, right? I feel sad, I'm angry, I'm hurting, right? It's weighing on my chest. It is it's dark and it's cloudy, right? So that's the first step, is identifying, right? Identifying the thing. And this is what I was saying earlier, like it's going to be a stretch, but just kind of walk with me. But identify the thing, whatever the thing is whatever the trauma is, whatever the trigger is. What is it? What is the shape? What is the color? What do you see? Right? What is it doing? What is that thing doing when it comes to the trauma and the trigger? What is it? What is that thing? Right? So then the next step is, what are the feelings about the thing? So identify the feeling. Use detail and concrete images to describe what you are feeling. How are you feeling at the moment? And then jot down your raw thoughts. And then we'll come back to this. So we're going to go back to the inanimate object, right? So if I put a stapler here as an example, same inanimate object. If it were a person, how would it feel? Example, how would a stapler feel, right? Would it be happy? Would it be sad? Would a stapler be happy about its job? Personally, I think so, right? It's connecting paper, connecting sheets of paper together. What is its purpose? Excuse me, what is its purpose, right? Example, a stapler connects papers together. I can relate that to life and connecting people, right? But that's, again, a deeper level. So now take what you already wrote, the things that you already wrote, and feel free to add to it. And we're going to do another 60 seconds, but I want you to dig a little deeper, right? Think about that thing as an object, right? So Jessica said she had a mug, right? How does the mug feel? When you picked it up, you're like, oh, it's hot, right? So is the mug hot? Is the mug warm and cozy? How does the mug feel, right? So everybody got it? Any questions before we continue? All right, so we'll do another 60 seconds and go. And time. All right, would anyone like to share?
I'll share.
Okay, thanks, Bonnie.
The conversation sits like a Lake Superior stone, cold, hard, hidden at the bottom of my throat. It is covered by the texture and stillness of my tongue.
Oh man, well, so what was your object?
My object is a Lake Superior stone, but it's sitting on my desk, and this shell has been over it.
Gotcha. Oh man, that's deep, Bonnie. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate
welcome.
it.
And thank you.
Anyone? All right. Anyone else want to share?
I'll go.
All right, Shell.
Mine is the very overstuffed pencil cup on my desk that has art supplies in it. It's a disaster.
Okay.
I'm crammed past capacity, stressed, overtaxed, but full of beauty, color, and hope. Chaotic but contained, full of possibilities.
Ah, I love that. I love that. I love workshops with poets, man. Like, I just love words. I love it. Thank you, Shell. All right. Anyone else?
I don't mind having a go.
All right. What's your object, Mary?
It's my glasses.
Okay.
I'm laid aside again, often abandoned and lost, but my pride is boosted when I get promoted to her face and produce my shiny magic. Hey presto, you can see again. How come you keep taking me off?
I love that. I love that. Thanks for sharing, Mary. All right. And we can
Thank
do
you.
one more. Anybody else? All right. So now, right? So if we go back and we're talking about, so like I was using my example of grief, right? Identify the feeling. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling hurt. This is the color. These are all the things that I'm feeling about this thing, right? Now I'm going to use detail about that thing, right? Grief is weighing on my heart like a boulder, right? Or grief is sitting on my chest like the pain is keeping me up awake or keeping me awake at night, something like that, right? Like I'm describing the pain or I'm describing whatever the thing is. So identify whatever the thing is, talk about it, identify it, write it, what's the color, the size, the shape, what does it look like? And then go a little deeper, right? How are you feeling about that thing? I feel terrible. I feel horrible. I'm mad. I'm angry that my friend is gone. I'm angry that I don't know how to control this grief. And I'm angry about not being able to just pick up the phone and call my friend, right? Those are the things I'm feeling. So now, oops. So now we dig a little deeper, right? You want to tell a story about the thing, about whatever that thing is. If I were to tell a story about grief and I were to compare it to something, I'd probably compare it to rain and clouds, right? And trying to use my life as an inspiration or past experiences to use that as inspiration to write the thing. So let's go back to the stapler. If I'm writing about the stapler and I'm talking about how the stapler looks, what the stapler feels like, if it were a person, now I would tell my story about using a stapler, right? How did I feel using the stapler? Am I in control of the stapler? Is the stapler in control of me? I need the stapler, right? So obviously it's something that is a necessity. It's something that's necessary for me to keep going. Rumi, I love Rumi. Rumi's one of my favorite poets. He said, keep them on the road. I said, what about my passion? He said, keep it burning. I said, what about my heart? He said, tell me what you hold inside it. I said, pain and sorrow. He said, stay with it. The wound is the place where the light enters you. One of the things that I have learned about poetry, or that I've appreciated about poetry, is that no matter how deep or vulnerable I get with it, I always feel lighter afterwards. I always feel freer. The poem that I did when we first began, that was probably one of the hardest poems for me to write, but it was also one of the most freeing poems I've ever written, because I said the things that I've always been afraid to say. I said the things that I felt would make people look at me differently. But when I wrote it and then I started to share it, every time I read that poem, I feel a weight just lifting off of me every single time, right? That last line where it says, imagine taking the necessary steps to heal. Imagine this poem being one of them. That is a step. That's a huge step in writing down your feelings. It's not easy to write about your feelings. It's not easy to talk about your feelings out loud, especially in front of a room full of people. But at the same time, who says that you have to read it to them? Who says that you have to share it with anyone, right? Who says, there was a question earlier in the chat that said, what is the difference between poetry and a journal? I believe, for me, journaling is something that's personal. You know, although some forms of poetry can be personal, I feel like journaling is kind of like your conversations with God or whoever you believe in, or conversations with yourself. Those aren't necessarily things that you share, right? And so when we talk about digging deeper and we talk about expressing our trauma and our trigger, utilizing poetry, don't focus on reading it or sharing it with anyone. Just focus on getting it out first. That's the first step. The first step is even talking about it. The first step is even identifying what the thing is, writing it down, putting it on paper. I am hurt. I am sad. That's the first part. That's not anything that you necessarily have to share with anyone. It can be something that you share if you choose, but the first part is actually getting it out. I have tons and tons and tons of poetry that I've never shared with anyone, but the act of actually writing it and getting it out has helped me tremendously. And it's not something, it's almost like it's a you versus you thing, right? It's not something that you necessarily have to share with anyone. Once you write it, and if you decide to recite it or share with other people, then that's your business, right? That's something that you can choose to do. But the first part is actually getting it out and allowing yourself to not choke up on your words, right? And not allow your words or your thoughts to silence you, right? That's the biggest step, is getting it out. So these are some poems I found about a stapler. Who knew that there's so many poems about a stapler? But this is what I found about a stapler. Bend the metal, please. Bend the metal for order. Bend the metal into closed elbows to grip the paper pile. Load the metal, then bend it. Snap and resound as the metal bends, a gavel pronouncing order, closure of paper piles. The words of each page gain from the grip and the order that is position. Become the top or bottom or the hidden center of the pile. Words of poems, words on lines, poems on pages, pages in piles, bound by a metal hug, a goodbye hug. And the snap is a train gear gripped by a strong hand, and the farewell is a platform where the typist stands with the dry tongue of all envelope liquors, and the papers and the poems ride a postal train down metal tracks bound for the bend out of sight. What? How beautiful is that? About a stapler. And then the next one, stapler, my stapler, a poem of love. Silver stapler on my desk, you fill me with delight. Even though you have no teeth, you still can give a bite. Paper clips just slip and slide and pages fall apart. But silver stapler on my desk, you know you have my heart. Beautiful, right? Beautiful, beautiful poetry. The one thing that what I love about poetry is that there are no rules. There's no rules. If you decide to put some structure to it, then yes, but there are no rules about when it comes to writing. Just write what you see, write what you feel, start there, and then worry about the other stuff later, right? Write first, edit later. So now we're talking about the structure, right? Like I said earlier, the theme of the poem, the structure of the poem, what it sounds like, if it's a haiku, if it's a cinquain, none of those things matter if you don't even know what you're writing about. If you don't even know how to identify whatever the thing is that you want to write about. If it's something that you decide to structure later, feel free to do that. But just free writing all the things first. When it comes to like your triggers and trauma, use that 60. I only use the 60-second exercise just for the sake of time here, but you can use that too when you're talking about, if it's something that you want to write about that you're afraid to say, right? When it comes to fear, when it comes to grief, just write. Set a timer for 60 seconds and just write whatever thoughts come to mind. And then do that again. Do that as many times as you need to, and then worry about structure. But get it out first. Get it out first, and then go back. All right. Then you can start talking about using literary devices like metaphor. I personally love metaphors, or a simile, and then personification, right? Use sensory descriptions. What does it smell like, right? If I were to put color on grief, I would say black and brown and just drudgery of whatever this, like the color of drudgery and sadness, right? And if I were to think about what it smells like soot. It smells like pain. It smells like a disgusting smell, right? Something that I don't want to keep smelling. I don't want to keep feeling, right? So start thinking about those things. Use a sensory description. Then try some structured poetry, right? Take everything that you wrote and then try to put it in a structured poem. So like a haiku, right? Haiku is probably one of the easiest things to start with. It's easy but hard, right? People think it's easy to do 5-7-5, but when you start counting syllables, you're like, oh man. So a haiku is typically one of the first things that people try to learn how to do. A cinquain is syllabic poetry characterized by a distinctive 5-line structure. I believe the structure is AABACC, I believe. AABAC, something like that. But the first line, it has 2 syllables. Second line has 4 syllables. Third line, 6 syllables. Fourth line, 8 syllables. So typically what it is like the first and second lines rhyme. First, second, and fourth lines rhyme. But anyway, there's other forms of poetry that you can use if you want to start getting into the structure of it all. But I'm a big proponent of just getting it out first and then worrying about all the other stuff later. So read aloud and edit. Even if you have your thoughts that you wrote down, read those aloud. And as you read it, the more you read it, what I found is the poem will start to form itself. Because I've written down the words, I've gotten the words out. Now that I've gotten the words out, I can start reading it. And then I can start saying, okay, maybe this sounds, take this, put this here, move this up here, but I have to get it out first. And then you can edit. All right. So another writing exercise, and this isn't necessarily something that we need to do right now. It's something that I would really, really encourage you all to write when it comes to healing and identifying traumas and trigger, right? Either one of the two or both. The untouchable, something that will always be out of reach. And I would challenge you to dig deep on this, right? What is a feeling or something that you feel is untouchable? Some people feel happiness is untouchable. Some people feel peace is untouchable, right? Some people feel that unity is untouchable, right? What is that thing? Something that you feel will be out of reach. The other thing is 7 days, 7 lines. Write a poem where each line or sentence is about each day of the last week. What happened on Monday? What did you feel on Monday? How did you feel when you woke up? How did you feel midway? How did you feel? How did you end up feeling at the end of the day? Right. And I would do that with every single day of the week. So I can put that back on there. But other than that, that's all I have. I wanted to leave some time for some questions and anything else. Did you guys enjoy that? Did it make sense? I know sometimes like I'll be in my head about stuff. And I'm like, does it really, really make sense? So did you get the stretching, how I stretched it though?
Yeah, it was really clear. Just like identify the thing and see it, feel it, and then get it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part, right? It seems easy, but it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people to even identify. It's hard for people to say I'm hurt, right? It's hard for people to say out loud, I am hurting. I'm not feeling good. I am not feeling well. I am not myself. And those are things that I'm starting to do more of. If I'm not feeling something, I'm not feeling it. And I'll say it like, I'm not feeling it today. And that's okay. We're human. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. Right. We try not to dwell in those places, but it's okay to not be okay. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I just have a question.
Yes.
And my question is, and I don't know how much you work with kids. When I think about writing poetry and I think about like my 7-year-old self, I wish someone had, come into the school and talked about poetry with me.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you can talk about your experience with children. It's interesting, we talk about how for us as adults, it's so hard to say what we're feeling. And I wonder about kids. Kids sometimes are, they're off the wall and they're more expressive, but I wonder sometime too, if I think back on my 7-year-old self, what would I have even been able to talk about those things? Just your thoughts on kids, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So I would say one of the things that I'm learning in working with youth every day is that one, this is a completely different generation. This generation is not expressive. They are not, they don't want to talk about their feelings. They don't want to talk about how they feel. They don't, and what I have been learning through trial and error is the more I share my feelings about something, the more they're willing to open up and do it. So if I was to think back on my 7-year-old self, I know that I was afraid of expressing how I felt about things because my mom didn't express how she felt about things. And the adults around me, there was always a barrier there, right? Stay in a child's place, adult, you don't know how the adult feels because you're supposed to stay in a child's place, right? The way that I feel that we're in terms of innovating, learning and creativity with these young people is that we have to be willing to share our feelings. We have to be willing to say, I know what hurt feels like. I'm hurting right now, right? So when I'm with my youth, I tell them, like when I just experienced my friend passing, I told them I'm grieving and I don't know how to feel. I don't know what to do next. Whereas when I was younger, the adults in my life wouldn't have expressed that to me. They wouldn't have shared that with me, So what I'm learning with this particular generation is learning how to say the things myself, because there's that stuff that I got to heal from my own childhood, because I've been so used to being told not to share it, And so I think the way that we heal this generation is by literally showing them the way. We have to be willing to say it. If we want them to say it, we got to be willing to say it. We can't expect them to express their feelings if we're not willing to say, express our own feelings, right? If we're not willing to say, like I see a lot about people talking about gentle parenting. To me, gentle parenting is also being vulnerable, right? Hey, kid, I'm not feeling it right now. Life is kicking my butt right now. Life, you know, you don't have to necessarily go into detail, but they have to know that you are human, right? They have to understand that it's okay to feel. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to say that you are hurting. The important thing is, what's most important is what we do with it, what happens next. So when I shared with my young people that I was grieving, I then said, I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, but I know that I'm here with you all right now. And being here with you is helping me get through. And the most beautiful thing happened after sharing that with them. They were checking on me and they were saying, you know, they call me Miss Love. Miss Love, I'm sorry about your friend. Miss Love, I'm here for you. Miss Love, come give me a hug. You know, whereas that probably wouldn't have happened had I not even shared that with them. You know what I mean? So I think we have to be willing to open ourselves up in order to get them to open up. Does that answer your question? I feel like that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Anyone else? I just see some questions in the. Oh, awesome. You're welcome. They can't know what feelings are or how to define it if we don't express those things to them first. Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Par. Thank you, Elizabeth. Awesome. All right. So does anyone else have any questions, any outside of this workshop, any questions about anything else?
And if I can just say one more thing, I just absolutely love the idea. And I have learned so much from, you know, as you said, just get it out and then come back and edit. I think when we listen to poetry or we watch people who do sports or sing, it all looks effortless. But a good poem is not without effort. You know,
That's
we
true.
can vomit all over the page, but then we need to come back and edit and clean it up. And that's part of the craft of poetry. And I just love that you're teaching that to people, because I think that makes their poetry so much better, and they're not pressured to just do it on the first try and be done, because it never happens like that.
Exactly. Right. And thank you for that. It's true, because I tell people that all the time, like, it's that be authentic, just be you. Right. That's what is most needed, is you being you. But you can't truly be you if you're not willing to get it all out. If you're so focused on trying to structure it and trying to make it sound good, then how much of that is your actual voice? How much of that is actually you? I tell people too, when I first started out as a poet, I didn't like listening to other poets, because what I started to do was, subconsciously, the more I listened to other poets, the more I tried to sound like them. And until I was able to separate myself and find my own voice, I couldn't listen to other people and other poetry, right? Until I was, steadfast in my own voice and being who I am. Now I can go back and I can listen to poets and listen to CDs and all this stuff without feeling like I need to change myself or change my voice. So I would say, if there's anyone that's thinking about writing and poetry, don't listen to other poets. Because subconsciously we all do that, right? We all comparison is the thief of joy. We always compare ourselves. Oh, I don't sound as good. Who said that it's good? And not only that, you don't know what it took to even to get to this point. You don't know what all the struggles that I went through to get to this point. It doesn't, it may seem easy, but it's not, right? All right. And I do have one more poem I'd like to share. So, you all know it's National Poetry Month. Let's see. It's National Poetry Month, and poets from around the country participate in a 30 for 30 challenge where we write a poem a day for every day in April. So I wrote a poem. I hosted an open mic at the library during Art Walk here on the first Wednesday. And that night during the Art Walk, there were so many first-time poets. And I was just really inspired by that. And I felt like it was awesome. So I wrote a poem in honor of that. So here we go. What a beautiful blessing it is to be a part of someone's first time on the mic. Like, you could have not done it, could have allowed fear to cloud you with doubt, gave bloom to the incessant shouts in your head that your words aren't good enough. Is it a poem or not? Will they even understand what I'm saying? Trust me, I've been there, and I still go through it. So many unshared thoughts lay dormant on pages and notebooks I've promised to fill, collecting memories and dust, trusting vulnerabilities to lined papers more than audiences in strange places. How courageous of you to do this. Every time it happens, it's reminiscent of my first time. Sweat prints from my thumbs, gripping rattling paper, heart choked up in my throat. Oh my God, do I look bloated? Is my zipper undone? Did I put on deodorant? What if someone wants to hug me? Forever known as the musky poet. Who even said that I was? A writer who pens poems. Is it confident or cocky to say that I am the poem? I am the words and the rhythm. I am the hymns, given purpose through a pen, writing sins, not tragedies, casualties of love and war, yin and yang, dark and light, praying that if I say it on a mic, I would finally believe that poetry is my healing and God, the ultimate healer, mirrored spirit speaking through me and to me. Reading your self-work aloud ain't easy. Pain reverberating off the walls, palms holding on to a small bit of hope that at least one ear would catch the lesson. What a blessing it is to be a part of this journey with you. And I pray that with this experience, continuing on is what you seek, remembering that your words mean so much more than this microphone. So get free, poet, get free. So that is a saying I like to say at the open mics. Especially when someone shares something that is really, really deep and vulnerable. Get free, poet. To me, poetry is a way to get free, and let go of trauma and triggers and hurting and acknowledging the pain. To me, poetry is a way to get free of all of that. Musky poet, so right, yes, exactly, right. I'm Yeah,
I just wanted to say something really quick. Thank you so much for this workshop. It really has helped me out so much. I consider myself a first-time poet now, even though I used to write poetry back in my teens. But then I'm just now connecting all of the dots, that something traumatic happened to me to where I stopped being the artist that I know I am now. And I'm now becoming the artist that I am today and who I will be in the future. And I'm very proud of myself for taking that first step. So just thank you for this, because this is amazing. You really just opened my eyes. I'm trying not to cry, but this is amazing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm proud of you too, right? I'm proud of you just for just getting it out and getting out there and focusing on just getting it out and focus. To me, that is the healing, right? And it is an honor to be a part of that with you. So this is awesome. I love it. You guys are amazing. I love poets and love writers.
Thank you. This was great to be part of.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Deshauna, are we friends on Facebook?
Yes, we are. I follow
Okay.
you at least.
Okay, cool.
That's how-
Inbox me. Let's talk.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.